I never thought much about age in relationships. To me, connection was about shared values, mutual respect, and the kind of comfort that makes silence feel like a warm blanket. That's why, when I met Ryan at a friend's small birthday gathering, I didn't even think to ask how old he was. He walked in with that slightly awkward but genuine smile, the kind that makes you want to smile back before you even realize it. We ended up sitting next to each other on the couch, both avoiding the loud drinking games in the kitchen. Instead, we started talking about music, travel, and somehow ended up laughing about how we both hate pineapple on pizza. Hours slipped by, without me noticing. The first time I found out about the age gap was a week later. We had gone out for coffee, and while joking about high school memories, he casually mentioned graduating in 2018. I froze for a second, doing the math in my head. Wait, 2018? How old are you? I asked. He hesitated, then smiled sheepishly. 24. You? 31, I said, bracing myself. There was a small pause, but then he just shrugged. So? That so caught me off guard. I'd been in relationships where smaller age gaps were treated like some kind of scandal, yet here he was, completely unfazed. Over the next few months, we fell into a rhythm: brunch on Sundays, movie nights on my couch, spontaneous road trips when we both had free weekends. The age difference faded into the background, most of the time. Sure, he was still figuring out his career, while I'd been in mine for nearly a decade, but it felt more like different life chapters rather than different books entirely. Then came the conversation about meeting his family. My parents are traditional, he said one evening as we were cooking dinner. They might have opinions about the age thing. Might? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Okay, probably will, he admitted, laughing nervously. I told him I could handle it. I've dealt with judgment before, from coworkers, from strangers, but I wasn't prepared for how personal it would feel when it came from people he loved. We set the date for a Sunday lunch at his parents' house. He assured me they were good people and that if they just got to know me, they'd see why he loved me. I believed him. That optimism lasted right up until the moment I shook his mother's hand. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. His father was polite but distant, asking me more about my plans for the future than about who I was as a person. It was subtle, but I could feel the quiet judgment in every question. When dessert was served, his mom casually said, "Ryan's always been mature for his age, which is probably why he's comfortable dating someone older." She smiled again, but it was the kind of smile that makes you feel like you've been labeled and put in a box you didn't ask to be in. That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to be as simple as just winning them over. After that lunch, I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it. Maybe they were just reserved people. Maybe their guarded smiles and probing questions weren't about me specifically. Maybe they were like that with everyone. But a week later, Ryan admitted, "They asked me again how old you are." Twice. I was stirring my coffee when he said it, and I paused mid-sip. "And what did you say?" "The truth," he shrugged, "that it doesn't matter." But I could tell from the way his voice dipped at the end that it did matter, to them anyway. From then on, little moments started to pile up. If I posted a picture of us on Instagram, his mom would comment something like, "Ryan always looks so young for his age," with an almost pointed emphasis on the word young. His dad started inviting him to more guys' nights without me, which he'd never done before. And when Ryan mentioned the idea of us taking a trip together next summer, his mother asked, "Wouldn't it be better for you to focus on your career before settling down?" It was never outright hostility, just this constant, underlying suggestion that I was unsuitable, too old, not in the way they pictured their son's future. Ryan and I talked about it a lot. "I just want them to see the way I do," he told me one night while we were watching a movie. Smart, funny, beautiful. Not a number. I appreciated his words, but I also knew that perception, once cemented, was hard to change. And part of me worried that every family dinner, every polite smile, every quiet judgment would start to chip away at us. The first real crack appeared a couple of months later. We were at his sister's engagement party, and I overheard his aunt talking to someone behind me. "She's nice," the aunt said in that tone people use when they're about to say something unkind. "But it's just..." She's already in her 30s. Doesn't he want kids? I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The words lodged themselves deep enough without a response. That night, Ryan noticed I was quieter than usual. I didn't tell him exactly what I'd heard, but he could sense something was wrong. By the time we reached the 3-month mark after that first meeting, I realized this wasn't going away on its own. His parents weren't just going to get used to it. If anything, they seemed to be doubling down. And then came the first big decision we had to make as a couple, whether to attend a family trip his parents were organizing for the holidays. Ryan wanted me there. His parents didn't exactly extend the invitation. That's when I decided it was time to stop ignoring the problem and start addressing it head-on. Ryan had been talking about his family's annual holiday trip since the day we met. It was their thing, a week in a cozy cabin upstate, filled with snowboarding, card games, and way too much hot chocolate. Naturally, I imagined being a part of it someday. When December rolled around, Ryan casually mentioned, "So, the cabin's booked for the 20th to the 27th. I told them you'd come." I smiled. That sounds perfect. But the smile faded when, 2 days later, he came over looking frustrated. "So, Mom said there's not enough space this year, and Dad thinks it might be better if it's just family this time." "Just family," I repeated, my voice flatter than I intended. "I told them you are family," he added quickly. But they wouldn't budge. The sting wasn't just about being excluded. It was about the message underneath it, that no matter how much Ryan and I loved each other, I was still optional in their eyes. For a day, I considered telling him to go without me. I didn't want to be the reason he missed a tradition he loved. But that night, lying in bed, I realized something. This was a line in the sand. If I kept stepping back to avoid conflict, eventually there'd be no space for me at all. So I told him, "If they don't want me there, I'm not asking for a seat at the table. But I'm not going to sit at home waiting either." That's when he surprised me. "Then I'm not going," he said simply. I sat up. "Ryan, you love that trip." "I love you more," he said. "If they can't accept us as we are, then they can do the trip without me." And he meant it. He stayed. We made our own holiday plans, a quiet Christmas Eve just the two of us, and a New Year's Eve party with friends. But his decision came at a cost. His mother didn't call him for almost 3 weeks. When she finally did, it wasn't to ask how he was, it was to say she was disappointed in the choice he made. It hurt him. I could see it. And that's when the first cracks of doubt started to creep in, not about us, but about how long we could keep up this quiet war with his family without it breaking something important. The new year was supposed to feel like a fresh start. Instead, it felt like Ryan's parents had made a resolution to fix what they saw as a mistake. It started with small things, his mom inviting him over for just a quick lunch without me. Then his dad asking him to help with a project in the garage on weekends. At first, I told myself it was harmless. Parents wanting to spend time with their son wasn't a crime. But then Ryan came home one evening, quieter than usual. "What's wrong?" I asked. He hesitated. They think I'm wasting my time." "With me?" I said, not as a question. He nodded. "They keep saying I'm young, that I should be with someone my own age, that I'll want kids someday, and maybe you won't or can't." The words hit harder than I expected, even though I'd heard the sentiment before. It wasn't just an age comment, it was an attack on the future we'd talked about building together. I asked him what he said to them. I told them it's my life, that I'm happy, but it's like they're not listening anymore. That was the moment I realized his parents weren't going to come around easily. In fact, the more we stayed together, the more determined they seemed to be to break us apart. A few weeks later, things escalated. Ryan's mom called him in tears after we posted a photo from a weekend getaway. "I just don't understand why you're throwing away your best years," she'd said. When he told me about it, I could see the exhaustion in his face. He was stuck in the middle, torn between the woman he loved and the parents who raised him. One night, after yet another tense conversation about his family, I asked, "Do you think they'll ever accept me?" He didn't answer right away. Then, finally, "I don't know. But I know I'm not leaving you." It was the kind of reassurance I needed in the moment. But in the back of my mind, I wondered how many times he could be forced to defend me before it started to wear him down. And then something unexpected happened, a moment I never saw coming that would change everything. It happened in the middle of February, on a night so cold you could see your breath indoors if you stood too close to the drafty windows. Ryan's sister, Emily, had gone into labor 3 weeks early, and Ryan got the call while we were cooking dinner. "We have to go to the hospital," he said, already grabbing his jacket. When we arrived, the waiting room was tense. His parents were there, pacing. Emily was still in delivery, and complications were slowing things down. Ryan went to check on his sister's fiancé, leaving me alone with his mom and dad. It was awkward at first, polite nods, murmured updates about Emily. But as the hours dragged on, the tension started to crack. At one point, his mom sat down beside me and whispered, "You've done this before, haven't you? Waiting like this?" I nodded. My best friend had gone through a difficult birth a few years ago, and I'd stayed at the hospital with her family all night. I told his mom about it, about the waiting, the worry, the relief, when everything turned out okay. She listened quietly, and for the first time, I felt like she wasn't just hearing my words, she was actually seeing me. Around 2 a.m., Emily's fiancé came out, pale and shaken, saying he needed a moment. I instinctively got up, found him a bottle of water, and stayed with him until he calmed down. His parents watched the whole thing. When Emily finally gave birth, a healthy baby boy, Ryan's parents hugged me without hesitation. His mother's voice cracked when she said, "Thank you for being here tonight." It was a small thing, maybe, but I could feel something shifting. Over the next few weeks, his parents started including me in more conversations. His dad called to ask if I could recommend a good restaurant for Emily's birthday dinner. His mom even sent me a picture of the baby in a ridiculous hat with the caption, "Thought you'd appreciate this." They still didn't openly acknowledge that they'd been wrong about us. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just the older girlfriend, I was part of the circle, even if just barely. Ryan noticed it too. "I think they're starting to see you," he said one night. "Not your age. You." I wanted to believe that. But part of me knew there was still one more test ahead, one that would prove whether they truly accepted me or were just tolerating me because they had to. By summer, things between me and Ryan's parents were calmer. We weren't best friends, but we could share a meal without icy pauses or subtle jabs. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that their acceptance was conditional, that at any moment, the old doubts about my age could resurface. That moment came sooner than I expected. Ryan and I had started talking seriously about marriage. We hadn't told anyone yet, it was our private little secret, wrapped in late-night conversations and shared dreams. But then Ryan's mom called one afternoon, asking if he'd be free for a family dinner. When we arrived, it was clear something was up. His parents sat across from us, hands folded, faces serious.
His dad started.
"Ryan, before you make any big life decisions, we want you to think about your future. Really think about it." I felt my stomach tighten. His mom added, "We care about you. We just don't want you to regret anything in 10 years.
Age.
It matters, whether you think it does or not." It was the same conversation all over again, the same doubts, dressed up in concern. I braced myself for Ryan's polite deflection. But this time, he didn't deflect. He reached for my hand across the table and said, "We've already thought about it. We're getting married." Silence. His mom's eyes welled up, and for a moment, I thought she might walk out. But instead, she said something I didn't expect. "If you're sure, then we'll support you." It wasn't a dramatic declaration of love and acceptance, but it was a choice, a conscious decision to stand with us instead of against us. The months that followed felt different. They asked about the wedding plans. His mom helped me pick out flowers. His dad offered to build a wooden arch for the ceremony. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes I caught a flicker of hesitation in their eyes, but it was real progress. On our wedding day, as I stood at the altar, I saw his parents in the front row, smiling. Not politely, not grudgingly, but genuinely. And in that moment, I knew that while age might have been the first thing they saw, it wasn't the thing they would remember. because love, in the end, had outlasted their doubts.